Welcome to At the Heart of It, where we talk about life, celebrate creativity, champion entrepreneurship by getting to the heart of the why behind what we do. I'm Bryton Udy, and I'm very excited for my guest today. I think her Instagram bio is honestly the best way to introduce her. She's a challenge acceptor, podcast host, sports enthusiast, bobsled pilot, and Olympian. Alysia Rissling, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me today. Oh, and hot start. Dropping the dog leash in the background. Sorry about that.
Oh, good. Oh, good. So I personally am very intrigued by your story and how you became a bobsleigh pilot. I know it's not typically a sport. I think kids grow up going, that's what I want to do when I grow up. But I'm really excited to learn how that became, such a big part of your life. What was kind of that journey like for you to become a bobsleigh pilot?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, no one really grows up and says, I want to do bobsled, especially if you're from a city that maybe doesn't have a track, right? Because it's just so niche and there's only 4 towns in North America that have, Calgary just being the biggest city that does. But I was born and raised in Edmonton, so not too far away. I was a basketball player in university. Long story short was that I actually was there on a basketball and track and field scholarship at University of Alberta, and I had to drop track after my first year. In my third year, the bobsled team was doing a recruiting camp for the track and field girls. I wish I was no longer on the team, but I happened to be working out in the same gym, and the girls that they were recruiting, I was kind of like, well, I used to race her and beat her, and at the time I was lifting a lot more weight than those girls were. So I had my prof, who was an ex-Olympic weightlifter who was kind of coaching me at the time, ask if I could go try out. And he said, they talked to me and they said, yeah, no problem. Like, if you want to come through this ringer of tryouts, go for it. But if you make the team, we're going to need you to drop your degree. You're going to have to move to Calgary. You're going to have to travel all winter. And that, for me, that meant giving up my scholarship, which was a hard no. But it kind of planted that seed. And I kind of forgot about it. I finished my degree. I took a year off after graduating, playing 5 years with the Pandas. Tried to get into med school. I failed.
Yeah.
That was my first big goal that I failed. So when one door closes, you go looking for a new one. And couldn't help but think that maybe I should try to be an athlete again. I was really struggling with the whole post-sport identity crisis. And couldn't help but think that I was maybe not... I hadn't accomplished everything I needed to athletically yet for me to feel fulfilled from having a career in sport. So I did an identification camp right after the week of Stampede of 2012 and didn't do great, but did good enough that they invited me back to tryouts 6 weeks later. So I put myself through a gauntlet, got into the sport. Meant to only do it for a year or two while I figured out what I wanted to do next with my career. But fell absolutely in love and decided I needed to try to at least be an Olympian, and now I'm going into year 10.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. You touched on something that I would love to dive into a little bit more, is that post-sport identity crisis. I went through that myself. Like, for me, it was hockey. I was a goalie. That's what I wanted to be since I was a kid, and made it to playing junior A in BC and, touring all the schools and the whole thing, and went, this is just not for me anymore. And even though I knew in my heart that it wasn't what I wanted to pursue anymore, you kind of leave that sport going, who am I? What am I? That's such a big part of your identity. How did you navigate that? Obviously, it was kind of going from one sport to another in a way, but what was that experience like for you?
That experience for me was very negative, and looking back on it, I did not handle it well. I let it go for too long. I ended up pulling myself out of it, not just necessarily because I entered a new sport, but what got me out of it was finding a new goal, a new purpose, a new passion. This time around, I'm very aware that it is something that, my sporting career is on its way out, and I don't know how many years I have left, but I've already started to take the steps to make sure that I already have a new goal set for right when I'm done, because for me, that's what kind of, when you have a goal, you have a purpose, and that's kind of what I've learned it makes me helps give me the drive that I have. It's actually what makes me the good athlete that I have been throughout my life. But that first time around for me, it wasn't diagnosed, but I'll call it depression. It was going down the wrong path. It was kind of what you talk about, how we want to get kids into sport because sports keeps them out of trouble while I was getting in trouble. It was the lack of passion. Yeah, passion. I could say it again because that's really what it was. And I became a shell of who I usually am in that year, and I'll call it was about 15 months where I just like I was going through the motions of life. I wasn't really living. I was just kind of coasting, and I wasn't thriving, and more than anything I wasn't trying to be the best version of myself. And the wake-up call that I had when I got out of there and found a new purpose, because I think what I really was doing was looking for that new purpose, and I found it through bobsled. Right. And just became super hyper vigilant and aware of like that's what happened to me, like that's why I was in that state for so long, and it really did have to do with that identity crisis. And now just really advocating for it, letting people know that it's a real thing, and as well as just being super prepared for it this time around.
Yeah, no kidding. It's not an easy journey to try and find, that new identity. It for me, I think it took me by surprise because it was also something that for me it was a really definitive choice that I don't want to do this anymore. And even still, with that being the definitive choice of that's not what I'm going to pursue, it is such a hard thing to wrap your head around because so much of who you are is wrapped up in.
Isn't it crazy though? Because it's people, like you said, like people who even make their own choice to no longer be in the sport still experience it as much as the people who maybe their sport ended because of an injury or because they got cut or whatever it is. It's like, it doesn't matter how it ends. It's just that it ends and you're still facing it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's, a lot of it's also, that's your people, that's your crew, that's who you hang out with. So it's then also trying to figure out, who do you hang out with? Yeah. Who are your people now, right? So totally. Who's your community? Which I think is a really interesting segue in that way is, it seems like the bobsled community is such a great place to be. I mean, I saw just a glimpse of it when I was out to see you and your team compete in the World Cup when it was in Calgary at Windsport. And Connor, who was actually a previous guest on the episode or on the podcast from Local Laundry, and he made the introduction. But watching you and your team, both, I believe it was men's team and women's team, just Team Canada, working together, supporting each other. How helpful was that for you in that transition to be able to have that community and that support system to kind of help bring you into the be
a high level athlete, and that's a good. It's vital for us. It's vital for us to have that tight knit core knit group because we have to spend so much time together. Like we are in very high stress situations with each other for pretty much 5 months of the year nonstop. When we go on tour, it's like you said, we did have the one World Cup in Calgary, but we no longer have Calgary on the track. And so that would be like our 1 week at home where you have some normalcy, you have your normal food, your normal bed. When our season starts in September, we spend most of the first part in, or usually it's October, it's September this year because Olympic year, everything starts early, but we'll be in Whistler. And then when we're in Whistler, we're just around the same group of people. And then even though that's our home, it's our second home, it's still different because we're sleeping in usually dorm style rooms, have community kitchens, that sort of deal. And then all of a sudden we go to Europe. And when we're in Europe, we are in beds, literally single beds that are side by side, because that's the European definition of what a double bed is a king bed that has like split down the mattress, but you're still right beside each other. We eat all 3 meals together throughout the day. We're at the track together for 5 hours a day. We got, sometimes if the girls are going, the guys are help moving the guy sleds. If it's a guys 4-man day, we have a bunch of girls' hands on top of the guy sleds helping them out. And we're a family. So like I'd go one step further of defining us as a family than just a community, because, you know, I think my relationship with most of the men on the team is I view them as very similarly to my brother, where they often annoy me. Most of the time they drive me crazy, but I love them so much, and I couldn't do what I do without them. So I'm very thankful to have that group that we've had, and for most of us, we've been together for pretty much my entire career. And it's an instrumental part in you making it in the sport. If you sticking around, if you have that longevity of your career, you do it because you find a role within that family, and you're able to balance each other out and collectively work together. And people who have a hard time fitting in with the family are usually the ones that we see don't stick around for very long.
Right. It's interesting. You know, what's so interesting about that sport too is it being a team sport. And what I think is really exciting and great about what you're doing is not only it's really focused on your sport, but also on being a champion for sport with kids as well. Like you said, right? It's, if you're not in sports or not in activities as a kid, obviously there's higher chances of you getting in trouble, like you said. And being able to give back in that way within Kidsport and Classroom for Champions, how important has that been for you to be able to, you know, share the gift of sport and the power of sport and the impact of sport to kids in the community based on your experience?
Yeah, I feel, to me, being involved with Kidsport and Classroom Champions, I almost felt like it was my responsibility to give back, because I have been so blessed to have the career that I've had. I've had my education paid for, not once, but twice, because now that I was an Olympian, I was able to go back and get another certificate in business from Queen's. And sports taking me around the world. It's given me some of my best friends that I'll have for life. And even though it's changed the direction that I thought that I had planned on taking in my life, it's opened so many doors to me to things that I think are actually better suited for my lifestyle and how I want my future to be. And I have all that thanks to sport. And because I feel this gratefulness for it, I do feel a responsibility to use my platform, especially now that I think social media is such a big way of life now. And it was different for me as a kid, because if you would have told me as a 14-year-old girl that I could be 32 and still be a professional athlete, I would have laughed in your face. That's not a thing.
Right.
And of course now it is a thing. And I feel the need to share that and to use it responsibly. And because I think the world still needs some change and needs to keep going for what we've been doing. In terms of women's rights in sports and pushing towards that gender equality. And we have the platform to be able to raise awareness and do it. So that's why I like to share my stories. I like to share my journeys, because also I've had to learn some really tough lessons. And if I can share those lessons with the kids that I mentor, for instance, in Classroom Champions, that's kind of the best way that I feel has been able to maybe make their lives just one little bit easier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember when I was playing hockey, like you walk into a classroom of kids wearing a jersey, and you're a hero when you walk into that room.
Absolutely.
Like they're just so excited to see you, right? And immediately you're a role model. Whether you're reading a children's book or playing like floor hockey in the gym with kids, like that to me is probably the one thing I miss the absolute most about being an athlete, because immediately you can walk into a room of kids and be able to kind of make that impact. And it's a pretty special thing. How did you start to get involved with those two programs?
That's a good question. With Kidsport in particular, a lot of the other athletes that I was training with at the gym that I originally trained here in Calgary, we had such an amazing community and just such a group of great people with totally different backgrounds. Yes, we had some sliders, but we had some top-end rugby players. We had climbers, just like a whole assortment of athletes, and they were all involved with Kidsport as ambassadors, and it looked like what they were doing was a lot of fun. And it started off as, and being a Kidsport ambassador, the best part about it is that we get to be at all the Kidsport events as the local celebrities, and so those are fun events for us because it's win-win for everyone. We get to be there, we get to have a fun time with each other. We usually get to do stupid challenges and be the contestants in wing eating and pizza eating contests or whatever it may be. But in doing that, our entertainment is good for the people who are there on behalf of whatever their business is, or just if they're there to be a donor. And so it works out well for everyone, and we raise that awareness within the community. And then with Classroom Champions, I guess the way I got introduced to it is it's started by a former bobsledder, Olympic champion from 2010, Steve Messler. He's an American who lives here in Calgary. You've probably heard his name. He's a little bit legendary as well. And I'd seen him at actually a couple different events, and I knew his program, so I just applied. I didn't even ask him. I just applied because it just sounded like I loved the take on, you can go into a school and speak to 500 kids, and at the end of the day you'll leave, you never see them again, and you don't know the impact that you have in their life. But if you stay with a classroom for a whole season, which is a school year, and you go through a curriculum of lessons of goal setting, perseverance, dealing with big emotions, and you get to share your experiences live in the moment. A lot of times I'm sending these videos in from Europe and be like, okay, well, this is how I use it this week, and that impact is just so far greater, and it's more a matter of which kids didn't you impact than rather than if anyone is paying attention to you in a big school assembly.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was that program was kind of through a school year, which I think is amazing, that you can be involved with kids over an extended period of time instead of just like popping in, saying hello and leaving, right? Like you really are that champion for those kids in that class, which is awesome. Totally. I'd love to backpedal a little bit into the actual sport of bobsleigh and bobsled, because I did not realize, TV does not do it justice for how blistering fast you guys go down the track. Like it's unreal, and I cannot imagine what it is like.
Spoken from a true photographer trying to get some footage and realizing, oh, we're already gone.
Yeah, it's like trying to track you guys around. There was the
Kreisel, the big circle.
The Kreisel, yeah. Exactly. And I'm like trying to get you guys, are just like, whoa, okay, you're gone already.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little nuts. But I would love to know, as the pilot, you're sitting, you're leading the team, you're sitting there driving, you're virtually headfirst down a ice track. What is going through your head as the pilot of the team, with your team behind you, going down the track? Obviously, they've done their job to get started.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that feeling like? Like, what's going through your head?
So you want to know what's going through my head? Nothing.
Yep.
Nothing. Because so both of us push, but in women we compete in the 2-man and the Monobob. So Monobob is a new sport that just came up, and so that's the pilot and the sled by themselves. But the pilot does push, gets in first, and then the brakeman follows in. The brakeman's just back there holding on, and you're right, the pilot being the captain of the sled, the leader, it's our job as pilots to navigate the sled safely and quickly down the track. So what's going through my head is nothing, because the corners are coming at me so fast, and you've heard the saying, it takes 10,000 hours to perfect your craft, whatever your craft is. Yeah. But when I go through a corner, and I'm in the corner for 2 seconds, it takes a long time to get to 10,000 hours. So nothing's ever perfect. So I do visualizations prior to going down the track, where I put myself in my sled in my brain, and I basically shadow my steers with my hands. It looks like I'm dancing really poorly. And just to like kind of give myself every single scenario, because there's not that many scenarios. And usually when there's a new scenario, that's when you end up making a mistake. But you're usually either going into a corner on the left side, down the middle, or down the right. And I have to adjust my steer and my timing accordingly based on how I'm going into each corner. So if I have anything going through my mind, if I'm thinking about the mistake that I made in the last corner, where maybe I came out too soon and now I'm not set up for the next one, I'm already going to make a mistake in the next one. So in my mind, I'm relying on my visual cues of what's next, but my visual cues only go so far, because a lot of times, especially in a track like Whistler, where we're going up to 150 kilometers an hour, your vision is too slow. Like your concept of reality is too slow. You actually have to react subconsciously. So I just rely on right now it's based on my experience, the feeling that I have. I can feel the G-force kind of in my butt, because I have my legs outstretched and I'm pushing my toes into my foot pegs and my butt into my seat. So I can kind of feel where that pressure is going to push down on me, and then I know how I have to steer accordingly based onto that. So there's not a lot going through my head, because if I'm even one corner ahead, I'm not doing the work in the corner I need to right now. And if my mind's in the past, I'm not setting myself up for success in the future. So very much in the moment. And I like to say it's like you go into the zone, which is a really common thing, where I kind of just black out. To a point where I'm not cognitively aware of anything in my surroundings. I'm only like see what's directly in front of me.
I think that is so, it's the same for so many athletes though too. I'm pretty sure, while you were saying that, I'm pretty sure I heard Jason Day, professional golfer, say the same thing. Yeah. When he's on the green, like when he's going to putt, there's literally, if there's nothing going through his head, he's going to do okay. But if he really starts to overthink something, like that's when you start to make a mistake. Like Simon Sinek always talks about how our brains cannot process the negative, right? So if we say, think of a pink elephant, or don't think of a pink elephant, you're going to think of a pink elephant,
sure,
right?
Yeah,
so if you start thinking, don't screw up this turn, that's probably what's going to happen. But that's fascinating. I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper into the preparation for a race. You touched on it a little bit, of the visualization. That was always something that I did before games too, of trying to anticipate and prepare your body and your mind for what your body's actually about to do. Is there any other pieces within your preparation routine before a race that you run yourself through?
Yeah. And again, this is like super personal to everyone, right? Because everyone does something a little different. And for me, I like to take as many decisions out of the day as I can. So it's very much routine for me. So I just go through the flow of it. So it kind of takes a lot of the stresses out, because you're under enough pressure as it is.
Right.
So on a race day for me, I like to ideally eat the same time before a race. I want to arrive at the track at the same time, which is usually for me about 2 hours before. I like to have had my runners polished 2 days prior, because I don't like doing it the day before, because I don't want to be on my feet for any longer than I need to be. And there's just a bunch of little things that stemming back to my basketball days. I always put my left sock on, then my left sock, right sock, left shoe, right shoe. It's just like, you don't even have to think twice about it. It's just kind of, you're in the motion, and that allows your brain. For me, I need to be loose. Again, some people like to be super focused and intense. I don't. I'm the one that's probably dancing, jumping around, listening to some fun music, like nonchalant, because everything for me is just being in that flow. Already knowing that the sled's going to be on the line, and when I get there, I have one job, and that's to push the sled super fast. And then when I get in, my next job is the next corner. So it's not, I'm not thinking too far ahead. I'm not worrying about anything that may have happened before. I just like to be present in the moment. And that's kind of how I handled my race day.
There you go. Do you see any parallels or transition from preparation for a race into your everyday life, like whether it was going to school or other projects that you've worked on? Do you see any kind of parallels in that way?
Yeah, I think in general, in life, I do better when I'm a little bit more carefree, more nonchalant. It's not to take away, because people look at me and like, oh, is she even intense at all? And it's like, well, look at my career. I'm super intense. And like, this is kind of how I mitigate those situations. School, definitely probably too nonchalant in that case. So the first time around, at least, in my undergrad, definitely too much, because obviously it didn't end me to the career path that I originally was aiming towards. Second time around, as a student now, definitely have a better time management and planning ahead and just being more prepared for everything. And I think that just comes a lot from maturity as well. Yeah. There
you go. That's awesome. Probably my favorite part of your bio was challenge acceptor, and the fact that was the first thing that you put in your bio. It wasn't Olympian, it wasn't athlete, it was challenge acceptor. And I think just from brief interactions with you, creeping on social media before the interview today, prepping, that I would say that probably is the best identifier of who you truly are. And can you speak to how that has been a theme throughout your life? It seems like it's a bit of a driving force for you in a way.
Well, it actually is a driving force. If you really want to know the story behind Challenge Acceptor, that started with a group of girlfriends before I ever got into bobsled as a joke during Stampede. And we wore these shirts that said Challenge Accepted, and we got challenged to do the stupidest but funniest stuff, just by random strangers. So, I've always kind of lived my life like that, because I've always loved to, like, I'll prove you wrong in anything. And I really carried that forward so much that when I do my motivational speaking now, that's the title of my presentation, especially the ones that I do with corporate businesses, as well as what I do in schools. And the reason why I think that one's so important to me, because I never back down from a challenge. And a lot of my bobsled career in particular was a lot of people just telling me that I'd never be good enough, or saying that I can do things, but not giving me the tools to set me up for success. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong anyway. I'm going to show you that I can do it anyway. And I think that it's just carried over to how I preach, how I live my life, and how I want other people to see, because a lot of the biggest thing, and this is actually one that I've been working on right now with Girls in Sport Alberta, is in how important confidence is as a person, for you to really live up to your full potential. And sports given me that confidence so that I can go into any situation and never back down from a challenge, no matter if it's going to be a brain challenge or if it's a physical challenge. I just like to do things. Last couple weeks ago, I just entered a long drive competition in golf, just because.
Nice.
Just because I wanted to challenge myself and see what I would do in a competition in my off season. And I think it's really been an important factor of getting me to where I have today, and I think it's going to be the thing that's going to help me be the best version of myself in my future.
I love that. Now I'm intrigued though. Can you give me an example of something that you were challenged to do at the Stampede when you were wearing the t-shirts?
Oh yeah, I can. So a group of bouncers at one of the tents challenged us we had to do a full lap of the tent, which involved going up one side of the stairs, the high stairs, across the dance floor, and back up the other side of the stairs and get back to the front door. And we had 2 minutes to do it. And the tents, they're pretty big and they're
Yeah.
crowded, and it involved us throwing elbows. Some people might have got shoved out of the way. And I think there was 5 of us wearing these shirts, and I think only 3 of us got in the 2-minute time slot. And it was just for glory. I don't even think we got anything of it. I don't even think we got a free drink out of it, because it wasn't a manager that sent us. It was a bouncer. But yeah, just fun stuff like that. There was this rodeo that used to be called the Doggy Doo Rodeo, and participants got to participate in the rodeo. So I got bucked off a bareback horse that day, but still tried it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But talk about the stories that you're able to have after, like, by having that attitude towards life in general, right? It's something that I think most people look back on their lives and go, what are some of the most memorable moments or favorite moments, whether it was a failure or a success. It was something that was a big part of the life because it was a challenge that they brought themselves forward to accept. I love that that's kind of the overarching theme of your talk too.
Yeah.
I would love to be there for one of your talks at some point now.
Yeah. The way I look at it, I'm either going to have a great experience or a great story. And that's kind of just how I've lived my life. Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding. Absolutely. One thing I would love to dig into a little bit before we start to get to the rapid fire, which is my favorite part of each episode, because it's a bunch of random questions. I think it really kind of gets to the root of how our guests think. So, but first is representing your country at the Olympics. Talk about like an incredible opportunity. I think so many athletes, no matter what the sport, dream of the day where they can go and represent their country at the Olympics. What was that experience like for you in 2018, being able to represent your country in bobsled?
Yeah. So this actually kind of full circles our conversation, because if we can go back to 2012. I'm a year out of school. It's the summertime. I realize I'm not going back to school in the fall. I didn't get in. And I turned on the TV to the 2012 opening ceremonies for the London Olympic Games. Mm-hmm. And I'm in a bad place in my life. It's noon. I had just woken up. I had gone to bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was working in a bar at the time. And the parade of athletes comes through, and it's all the athletes that start with an A and a B, and then the Canadians. And I remember looking at those athletes, and they're wearing their huge maple leaf on the front. They're all waving little like handheld flags. Some of them have stickers on their face, and the smile on their faces, their smile of like they've accomplished what they're living their dream. The look of pride on their faces, and that's what I wanted to feel. And that's why I was like, oh, Olympics. I've been an athlete, but I never even contemplated going to the Olympics. Maybe that's an option for me. And then so fast forward to, not even 6 years later, 2018, and being one of those athletes, especially after, it was only 5.5 years later, but I went through hell and back multiple times through at that time frame. But being there and getting to walk in that parade of athletes, we were in the holding area. It was minus 35 that day in Korea. It was like they had this like crazy cold snap, polar vortex when we were there, but we were in this holding area. So we were wearing, I was wearing 3 jackets and like 2 pairs of snow pants, but we were warm before we got pushed out to go in the cold. And I just remember sweating, but just not even caring, because we were waiting for our turn to be called out. In the Korean language, Canada is written with a K, so we were actually like quite late.
Okay.
And there's 225 of us. We had the biggest team there, and we're just going, Canada, Canada, from like underneath the stadium. And it's so loud in the stadium, but we're almost making this section of the stadium like vibrate. And being part of that, I'm just giving me goosebumps right now. It just was like...
Yeah, it's giving me goosebumps.
Yeah, it was just that moment where you're just like, oh my God, I did it. Like, I did it. Like we accomplished something. We're here. We get this experience. And my cheeks hurt that day. My cheeks hurt for like the next like 48 hours because I just couldn't wipe the smile off my face. And it was just that moment of pride that I got to wear the red and white and represent my country and get to compete. And it was just, yeah, that feeling that I'm chasing, hence why I'm trying to get back there next year.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm assuming there's plans for you to go back and return.
Yeah, we're 7 months out, so it's getting real, or 8 months out.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's crazy. One quick question before we jump into rapid fire. One last one, I promise, is like when you're not training or on the track or in a bobsled, what do you get up to? I heard through the grapevine that you really enjoy wing night on Wednesdays.
Oh, you did hear that, hey?
I heard that.
I know who passed that one along. Yeah, so my life, I'd say, just like I'm just such a sports fan in general. So, my recovery days, I'm usually golfing.
Nice.
I play slow pitch. I'm such a restaurateur. I worked in the restaurant industry pretty much my entire coming up through university, and then being a waitress paid for my bobsledding career as well. So I love going out for dinners. My boyfriend and I are frequent wing night. They know our names. They know our orders on Wednesday nights, that's for sure. Best wings in the city, Beagle 14. Dive bar, can't go wrong. But yeah, so I'm just a very social person, very active. I love doing activities. I'll be floating the bow, or just hanging out with friends or walking the dog. I'm just out doing things. I love being outside, so that's where you'll find me.
There you go. That is fantastic. Well, we may have to put a tea time together. That'd be a lot of fun, and
hey,
I may have
challenge accepted. I'll be there.
Absolutely. There you go. Well, I also may have to crash your wing night at one point. I know Josh and Loren from Treadstone.
Yeah. We
they
might have
just walk
turned
in,
them.
apparently.
We might have
Exactly.
made them avid nighters as well. Yeah.
There you go. Awesome. Well, like I said, rapid fire is by far my favorite part of the interview. It's super fun just to see what the quick answers people come up with. So I've got 9 questions here.
Okay.
They kind of start pretty quick and then they get a little bit deeper as we go. But the first one is, what is one book that you feel that everyone should read?
Own the Day by Aubrey Marcus.
There you go. What is your favorite song? Whether of all time or right now, doesn't matter.
Oh, shoot. My favorite song right now is Astronaut in the Ocean.
Astronaut in the Ocean. I haven't heard that one. Who's it by?
Oh my gosh. Masked Wolf. Hip hop artist.
Okay.
Yeah, it just gets me going.
Check it out. Awesome. Salty snack or sweets?
Sweet. Always sweet.
Yeah. Do you have a go-to sweet?
Made by Marcus ice cream.
What flavor? Do you have a flavor that's your go-to?
You can't pick a flavor there. I'm like, I gotta try every single weird one. I love how they do the collection of the weirdest flavors. It's the best.
Absolutely. There you go. Lazy beach vacation or crazy travel adventure? I think I would know the answer to this one for you.
Yeah, you know what? You might not get this one right because right now I'm going lazy beach. I am dying for a beach. I go crazy travel 6 months of the year as is, so
That's true.
I'm a beach girl. Yeah.
That's fair. Do you have a favorite spot?
I think the favorite beach I've ever been to was it's Hawaii. Second favorite would have been Bali. Mm-hmm.
There you go. We're going to Hawaii in October for the first time, so I'm
so jealous.
I'm excited. Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite TV show or movie?
Yeah, favorite all-time movie is Wedding Crashers.
Okay, there you go. My wife kills herself laughing at that one too. She cackles.
I quote it at least once a week. Still.
There you go. Do you have a favorite local small business in Calgary?
For clothes, Blondie Boutique.
Blondie Boutique.
Yeah. For ice cream, made by Marcus.
There you go.
Two times tire pumps for made by Marcus.
There you go. 2 time. So these last three are a little bit deeper, but the first one is, what is one quote that you live by?
One corner at a time, which for me is that one step at a time, being very present. Yeah.
Love that. Mm-hmm. Who is someone that you would want to thank for helping you get to where you are today, and why?
My family. That's the easiest answer, but I literally could not have done it without them, from an emotional standpoint, from a financial standpoint. I wouldn't be where I am without them. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And if there was one piece of advice that you could share with your younger self, what would that be?
Yeah, I have a lot. I've done some personal reflection, but I think the one that I would tell my younger self to not be so closed-minded, to be open to opportunities and to be okay with change. I've always been a very driven, very focused. I was a very, very abnormal youth, where I was like, I have plan A, B, C, and that's the way it's got to be. And I wasn't really open, and I didn't really acknowledge some of the doors when they were open either.
That's a great one. I mean, for me, it's also like just following your heart. It's following your gut, being able to.
That's a much more beautiful way of saying it.
But it's true. It's listening to that piece. It's, at least in my experience, it's never led me astray. Even if it's led to a tough time, like sports identity crisis, it has always turned out to be the right choice. So there you go.
Super cliche, but everything happens for a reason, right?
It's true. It's true. There you go. Well. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time, Alysia. It's been a pleasure getting to chat with you, and learn more about bobsled and your why. If somebody's wanting to get more information about you or your career, or follow you on your journey to the next Olympics, where can they find you?
Yeah, the best place to get a hold of me at any point is Instagram. I'm at Rizz bobsleigh. You'll see a bunch of content on how a bobsled athlete trains in the summertime and going hard, and behind the scenes. Once we get going on season, you'll see us travel, and if I do make it back to the Olympic Games, I do a great job giving a detailed behind the scenes tour of the village.
That's awesome. Looking forward to that. Wishing you the absolute best of luck. We're rooting for you to get back to where are the games in
Beijing
for the next Olympics?
Beijing.
There you go. Well, rooting for you to get to Beijing. Thank you so much again, and we'll definitely have to hook up that tea time.
Okay, sounds good, Brian. If not, wing night.
Exactly. If not, wing night. Thanks, Alysia.
All right, thanks, Brian.